Ladies and gentlemen, this is Joe's Classic Video Games back with another cool pinball repair video for you today. We have been working on this Captain Fantastic pinball machine from Bally way back in the day for a customer, and we've got it all torn apart, as you can see. Look, there's stuff everywhere, and we've got to start cleaning it and putting it back together. So if you didn't see the previous video, we showed the condition it was in when we got it. We went through it and cleaned it up a little bit down in the bottom. Right? And we unbolted the bottom panel, got it up out of the game. We ran into a problem where they had cut one of the wires out of the Jones plug because it had burnt up. It's just an amperage thing. And that's about as far as we got on the previous video. It was getting quite long in the tooth. So now we're up to this. So we're going to work on this today. That and the bottom of the playfield. So when we tried to play it in the previous video, what it would do was it would start the game, kind of start resetting everything, and then it would immediately go to game over. So almost like, well, I don't know. I don't want to speculate yet. But we might find it while we're working through this stuff. So that's the issue as presented. And we're going to go through and try to fix it. So how do we do that? Well, on an EM, the way we do it is we go through and we just clean everything. And if you do that, theoretically, whenever you get done, it should work. We haven't really had one work completely whenever we get done yet. We have to go through and troubleshoot and figure out the little things. But if you were good enough, I think you could probably go through, mess with each thing, get it all exactly right, and then when you were done, hit the button, it would work perfect. We just haven't quite got that far yet, but we're going to try that again today, right? So the first thing I'm going to do is, all of our videos we kind of do for beginners because that's kind of how my mind works. I'm thinking about it, the simple little steps, you know, as I go through it. So I might as well just tell them to you as I'm doing them. This all looks super complicated, but it's not really that complicated. It's just a bunch of switches everywhere, okay? So we're just going to go through and clean all of those. So what happens is the switches get to where they're touching, or maybe they're not quite touching, but electricity can't pass through them, and that's why you get things that don't work. So to work on it, we're going to divide and conquer. So we're going to just slow it down a little bit and figure out what we want to do. So for instance, I'm going to start back here and work through all these relays, work through all those relays, and when I get done with that, all of the relays on the bottom board will have been finished. Now that sounds really simple, but people don't think like that sometimes. Yeah, it looks like a lot of stuff, but it's a bunch of the same thing over and over again, so it's not really that big of a deal. So how do we service it? Well, we go through, and everywhere there is a switch, there are two little contacts that touch together or open up. Now take a look at these two blades right here. The one on the left is shorter than the one on the right. You see that this cam moves the big one, because it's sticking through it, over and makes it touch the smaller one. And if you look at the smaller one, you see that it moves a little bit when that happens. So that tells you that the big one must be touching it. It's actually moving it. Okay. Now this middle one, same thing. And then this outside one, see it's the large blade is in the middle. It's touching the right blade that's shorter, and then it moves over and it touches the left blade and lets go of the right blade. Now if you look, it's just barely moving it, the left one. Okay, so when you find one like that, don't adjust it. It's probably fine. If you go through and adjust every switch to try to make it perfect where it moves a little more or whatever, you will screw it up bigger than hell. Don't do it. Leave it alone. If it's not touching and you're pretty sure it's not touching, yeah, go ahead and adjust it. And so to adjust it, you can buy, there's a little tool you can buy, but basically what you're doing is just bending that blade down here near the base so that the trajectory of it is it's a little bit farther that way. You're just bending them a little closer together. So that's what we're going to do. There are some too that are closed, like this one. See how it's already closed, and then whenever it pulls in, it opens. So it's as simple as that. They're all open and closed, or closed and open, and then there's some that wig-wag, right? Easy peasy, people. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to clean them all. How do we clean the contacts? We actually use like a little file that's kind of worn out, so it doesn't have a ton of grit to it. You don't want to go through and just eat up the contacts, but you do want to have something that's able to get the tarnish and the kind of burnt up spots off of it. Basically, these things kind of weld themselves together because it's all AC, right? So we're going to go through, try to get the contacts nice and shiny again or close to it, and if you do that to all of them, they should work when they turn on and off. Now you'll have one like this lock coil that's kind of toasty looking. That's not necessarily burnt up. The lock coils are wound a little bit differently usually, and they just stay on for a longer period of time, so they get pretty hot. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they need to be replaced. Eventually they will burn up and need to be replaced, but they're always going to be brown like that. It just means that the paper wrapper got hot enough to turn brown. Okay, so I'm going to clean through those and then through those, and I'll let you know if I find anything that's way out of whack that deserves to be filmed. So I got them all cleaned. I didn't have to really adjust many of them. This is probably the most complex one, the Game Over Interlock Relay. So the interlock ones can lock in place. So it can pull this way, and it locks because that little gate, the little actuator or whatever that is, pulled up the plate. And then when this one pulls in, it releases it. So it's locked that way now. So it can lock and release. And it's got some that close, some that open. And then down there at the bottom it's got some make or break ones that go each way. And so that's probably the most complex one. But everything was cool. I didn't see anything that was a major problem. We've had people in the past get on me because I don't tell everybody to tighten the switch stack. Well, if you're messing with it and the switches are moving, yeah, tighten the screws. But like on these, like you see the condition this thing's in. It hasn't been worked on in a long time. These screws are not loose at all. Nothing's moving. So I don't think it's all that big of a problem. But if you do see one with a loose screw, make sure to tighten that screw up. So we are now moving on to the score motor. So there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 different stacks of switches. Crazy. So basically, the reason that there's so many stacks is because of these, see these little, basically the impulse ramp where it, basically when it turns around, when it gets to that position, it will push the switches up and make them contact, right? They have them in different places on the different cams. So to time the machine, make it do certain things in a certain order, it has them on different cams. So we might talk about that later whenever we get into the schematics if we need to. So basically this is the same thing. It's just important that all of these are clean so that they conduct electrically, but there are a ton of them. So if you look on the end here, you can just see how many there are. So there's one down low there that's closed right now, and then above it there is another set that's closed. Then above it there is another set that's closed. Then above that, oh, that third one is a make or break one. There's one right above it too. And then above that, another make or break one. And then above that, another make or break one. So they're just complex, but it's the same thing. You just clean them, and then what I do is I turn the thing by hand and just watch and see if everything. So I'm just watching to see if everything on that stack goes up and down and connects and disconnects and all of that. Usually you don't have any of these in the middle that need to be adjusted. Sometimes you do, but usually they're just dirty. You just need to clean them. We're trying to figure out a better way to clean them, because the way I do it is I have to use a file, which is fine for some of them, but like whenever you're in here it's harder. You gotta kind of go at an angle, blah blah blah. People have said, oh, you could use contact cleaner. I don't think it'll work. Like, it's just not strong enough whenever you've got AC contacts, you know. So I don't know. We're still working on it. But yeah, you basically just have to go through and clean all of the switches, get them nice and clean. Same thing as the relays. And you're just looking for anything that's obviously screwed up. Sometimes on the top, you'll get one of these that's bent, and it'll be bent like way up out of the way. And it's because when the thing is in the machine, if you put like the manual in there, you can hit it and bend the top one up easier than the other ones. But this one, I don't notice any that are definitely like that, so I'm just going to clean them a little bit, and if I run into anything weird, I will let you know. So there was nothing particularly interesting about that. I've had tons of people say, why don't you show what you're doing? Well, here, I'll reenact it. Let me reenact what I've been doing for the last 45 minutes. Okay. Here we go. So you finally get to see me cleaning the score reels. I mean the score motor. That's two of them. I think I might have 3 of them ready. So next up, we're going to work on the stepper units. So in the bottom there, now, by the way, have you noticed we're running right through it, people? There's not much left. So we have the ball count unit here. Guess what that does? It counts what ball you're on. And then it has the coin unit here. Guess what that does? It counts how many credits you put in it, or how many coins you put in it. It's not quite as easy. That one there is not quite as obvious. It kind of does things different. It's how you basically it keeps track of whether you've started a 1-player, a 2-player, a 3-player, or a 4-player game. And it checks to make sure you have enough credits, and then it moves. So right now, it's on a 1-player game. If you pulse it up to a 2-player game, it just stays there the whole time. But I guess they call it the coin unit because it's how many coins have you spent in this game. A little confusing, but it's all right. So basically, these stepper units just need cleaned up like everything else. So you can see the rivets here, the faces of them, just get so dirty to the point literally where it won't conduct electricity anymore. And so we're on a hunt looking for the one thing that was causing it from starting, or causing it to go right back into game over. Okay, so it could be that there was something somewhere not connecting or shorted together or something. Usually you don't get shorts on any of this. You just get where it doesn't conduct. And if you look on this one, see how they have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They have 7 different fingers on that one blade. Those are all connected together. And it's like that so that if it turns all the way up to that last position, all 7 of them will be touching a different metal trace, and all 7 will be connected together. So it's just the design. This particular board here, in this instance, what it's used for is just for up to 4 players, but you can see that there's extra positions that they don't have anything on. So you could, there would be other uses for it too. It's essentially just a stepper unit that moves and connects things together as it goes. Okay, and then this one is the same type of thing, but it basically is, you've got 3 feet here that may all be connected together or not, I'm not sure. But when they spin around, they're basically going to connect a couple of the contacts to each other. So that can be used for something different, So it depends on what the engineers were trying to accomplish, what type of board they used, but they were expandable. You can see on this one that it only has a few lugs soldered on it, but you can imagine that they probably could have added a whole bunch more. And you can see over on this side of the board that there's all these little holes that they could put rivets in if they wanted to, and have different wipers on those, but they chose not to because they didn't need it just for the ball count unit. But if they wanted to get super creative, you could make a special ball count unit that uses another set of rivets here. You could add more rivets in, and so that when it's on ball 1, now this rivet is touching something. So you might have like a light on the back box, and it may be set up so that, I don't know, on the first ball, or you could do it with a well, how about this? You could do it with like a tape player or something. So on ball 1, this rivet's touching, and it's turning on the tape player to play this track on an 8-track or something back in the day, And then when it gets to ball 2, it touches a different rivet, and it changes and plays a different track on the 8-track. So it's a different song playing in the background while the game's playing. So these things actually, it was just how much money were they willing to spend, and how much time were they willing to spend to develop whatever you would need to make that happen. But they designed these things so that they were upgradable, basically, if they decided on the next machine that they wanted to add something extra in. So they just had the ability to expand built into it. It's pretty cool. So yeah, so on these, that's the front side. On the back side, on both of these, whoa, you have 2 coils. One's a step and one's a reset. So when this one pulls in, it's making the little thing move up. I'll do it from the front so you can see it a little better. And when this one goes in, it resets it back to the home position, right? But when this one goes in, steps up 1, and then it stops there. It never tries to go up to where it could. It's because they have a cam on here. This little, let me see how they've done it. Usually there's a tooth missing. Yeah. You probably can't see down in there. See the tooth missing on the nylon gear there? So when it gets to that, the little lever can't push it any farther. So when it pulls in, this little foot here, this, goes down and gets behind a gear. And then when you release, the springs pull the foot forward and turn the gear. Right? So it did it once, did it twice, did it thrice, and it can't do it because the gear's missing. So, same thing. They could have the gear missing or be mounted in a different place to make it have more steps, right? And they have these little posts here that help with that. So the post goes around, and this particular one, when you get to the top position, let's see how it is. Ah, they've got it wrong. I can show you how to fix something. All right, let me brighten it up so you can see what's going on. We found at least one thing messed up. Okay, so see that metal stud? That little sucker. See how it's pushing the switch way out of place? Now when I step it forward, position 2, position 3, position 4, remember we can't go any farther. If you look, it's still shut. So what's going on there? Well, that's a sign that that's messed up. Why would they ever put a switch that in all 4 positions it's closed? Like, this is key to understanding how these things work. Once you understand this simple little concept, tiny little classified ads, once you understand this simple little concept, you can fix any of them. If there's a switch, it must open at some point, or it must close at some point, right? So here's a switch that in all 4 positions it's closed. So why is that? It's because they've put it on wrong. Not the factory, whoever was working on it. It should be, let me see if I can do it with my hand. I think I can do it with my hand. Boom! Whoop, there it is. Okay, so look how we have it now. So we've reset it. So we're in position 1. All right. Now we're in position 2. Now we're in position 3. Oh, what's that? Now at position 4, the final position, it opened. So what would that be for? Well, this is on the coin unit that we were talking about. So remember I said that it keeps track of how many coins you've used in the current game. So basically, when you start a game, here I'll do it. Okay, so the game is sitting there. You press start. This stays how it is, I believe. Pretty sure. Or it probably resets whenever you press start. Okay. So this is a 1-player game. So after it resets and does all of its thing, you want to start a 2-player game. So you hit the start button again, and it goes like that. And it subtracts 1 credit from your credit reel in the back. But it moves up to position 2. And the reason that they need to do this is because when it goes from ball 1 to ball 2, it needs to say player 1, and then move over to player 2, and then move through player 3 and player 4, not use them, and go back to player 1. Right? So this is involved with that, keeping track of, you know, what order it all goes in. The player unit in the back does that too. This plays in it too. This basically is telling the machine, it's setting everything up to say it's a 2-player game. Okay? So let's hit the start button again. Now it's a 3-player game. So same thing. Now it's going to go score when that ball ends, score when that ball ends, score when that ball ends. It's going to go through this and go back to player 1. Right? So that's a 3-player game. So we hit the start button again, and it opens the switch. Okay. So now it's 1, 2, you got a 4-player game going on, right? So now we hit the start button again, and what happens? Nothing happens because that switch is open. So the purpose of that switch is so that you can't start a 5-player game. If you tried to start a 5-player game and that switch was closed all the time, it would just take a quarter from you. And it wouldn't be able to actually play a 5-player game. So, you know, a lot of times people comment about how the manufacturers and the operators were ripping everybody off. Well, here's an example of where they went through trouble to make sure that you didn't lose a quarter by trying to start a 5-player game when you already had 4 players up and queued up. So with that switch open, though, well, I don't know. I guess you can start a 1-player game with that switch open, but you probably wouldn't be able to start. Yeah, if that switch is misadjusted and open, you would never be able to start more than a 1-player game. When you start a 1-player game, it uses a couple different. It runs through a little bit of different stuff. The main difference is if you start a 1-player game, everything resets, and you go through the reset sequence. Well, when you start a 2-player game, the game over relay is already off because you're in the middle of the first-player game. You're right at the first ball of the first-player game. So it needs the ability with the game over replay. I mean, the game over relay no longer tripped. On that one, I hate to say if it's tripped or held in because I don't know which way it works, but it's one way or the other. Basically, the game over relay is doing one thing when the game's over and another thing when the game's in play. But it could be that the game over relay is actually tripped while the game's playing. But whatever, you get my point. You've got 2 different states of the game over replay. One while it's sitting there waiting for you to start a game, and then once you start a game, it resets everything and blah, 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 blah. The only way to start a 2-player game is to hit start before you play the first ball on the first player. And so if that switch is open, you can't do that. So it basically was adjusted wrong. I actually had one like this a while back that we were filming, and I figured all that out. I'd messed with it before, but we had that same problem where it was on the other side of that post, and we're trying to figure it out. And you might wonder, how could that happen? Well, if you take this off, sometimes this cam will spin. I mean, this gear will spin. There's usually a little thing in there somewhere to stop it from spinning, but if you're messing with it and it's moving in and out, it can get where it spins around, and that will go around and end up on the other side of it or whatever. But anyway, I don't know if it, yeah, it'll spin around and end up back over here. All right, so you just need to make sure that that's working right. On this side, you've got something similar. That will be the reset one, and this will be the step one. So same thing, it's stepping through. It's going to eventually get to a position where there is no gear to push. That's it right there. So it can't go any farther than that. Right? Okay, so whenever this one steps in, it has an end of stroke switch here. So that switch gets hit. Right? And then over here, you have a switch here. See the little plastic post there? So when it resets, it goes back and hits that and opens up those two switches. That's how I guess it knows that it's at the home position. But here's the thing with this one. You may have noticed earlier it didn't reset very well. So let me show you that again. So that's position, we'll call the original position 0. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you can go from position 0 to position 6 for a 5-ball game. Figure that one out. So watch when I reset it how slow it moves. That's pretty slow, actually. Now watch this. If I only go up one step and then reset it, see how it didn't really go all the way back? So let's go up 2 steps and reset it. I mean, it's kind of doing it. 3 steps. 4 steps. So sometimes you will get one like that where it sticks a little bit. It's actually really common, but it will be better at when it's farther up than it will be on just like 1 step. Because if you've only moved up 1 step and you reset it, this spring is just barely wound. So there's not much torsion or whatever on the spring to turn it all the way back. But if you move it up 6 steps, the spring's more tightly wound. So whenever you let go of it, it moves quicker, right? So how do you fix something like that? Well, it's a nylon gear, which is going to be running through the inside of here. There's a bearing down there that it runs through that you can see down there. So it has a shaft that runs through. And then that screw on the end there goes in it, right? If it's nylon in metal, you don't oil it or lubricate it or do anything. The nylon doesn't need lubrication, but a lot of times people did. So if someone has sprayed WD-40 or something on it, which it kind of looks that way, because look how dirty everything is. See all the black all over everything? Just looks like it's been oiled at some point. If you clean that off and get it where it's nice, clean nylon, it'll work a heck of a lot better. You don't need to lubricate it at all. And then on this side, where the fingers hit the board, I'm trying to see if that's grease. I don't know. Maybe. We do put grease on that. We put synthetic grease on it. But if they put WD-40 or something like that on it, WD-40 has a habit of like gumming up after a while. It'll get real kind of sticky. And so you just want to clean everything, get it clean, back to original, and it will pretty much move like it's supposed to. So the first thing I'll do is I'll take this screw off the end and I'll show you what it looks like with the spider off. So there is the shaft, and look at the end of it. You see that shininess? That's an oily residue, people. Somebody's put an oily residue on this thing. Come on now. People don't oil the nylon. People, you don't need to oil nylon. If it's nylon, you don't put oil on the nylon, people. Come on, people. Come on now. You don't put you put oil on if it's metal, if it's metal and metal, you put the oil. But on the nylon, no oil. No oil on the nylon, people. Don't put oil on. Man, this is really upsetting. Don't put oil on the nylon. Look at that. You see it? Right there. My finger is almost sticking to the damn metal. You know why? Oily residue. Don't do it, people. Don't do it. Look how it's oxidizing or corroding the copper. Look at it. You see now, don't you? All right, so we're just going to clean it all up. And you can slide that out too if you want. If you take the spring loose back here and you move these out of the way, the switches that hang over, you can slide that whole thing out. But a lot of times you don't have to, because usually they were too lazy to take the whole thing apart to oil it. So usually the oil's like in places that you can clean without taking it all the way apart. Of course, that doesn't make me lazy. Okay, folks, so one of our wonderful viewers has sent us a present. They think that these are going to work pretty good on Jones plugs, and I thought maybe I'd try using it on the stepper unit too. So you have these little rivets all around the edge that need to be cleaned up. I usually use like a really light sandpaper. And they have sent us these. Now these are made in Japan, which I like. I like made in Japan. Let me tell you what I like about this. I like that it's made in Japan. Japan's cool. I don't like made in China stuff. Sorry. That may get me kicked off YouTube because they own. But you know what I'm talking about. But I like Japanese stuff. And it looks real old school too. So I like that. I'll bet I could see this hanging on the shelf somewhere in like 1976. I mean, the packaging looks really old. I like it. This is right up my alley, people. This machine was made in 1976. Isn't that weird that that's the number I jumped to? All right, so I'm going to take one out, but let me get the note that they included with it first, and we'll read it. All right, so these are from Greg. It says, "Hi, Ron. These are designed to polish stains off of knives, but I found they work great for cleaning contacts like Jones plugs. Thought you might like to give them a shot. Thanks for the great videos, from Greg." Thank you, Greg. We appreciate it, buddy. All right, so we're going to, I think there's two different types. This is maybe a little more aggressive one. Yeah, this one's a little more fine. But it's all in Japanese, so I can't read it. But I'm thinking the way that you use it is you scrub something with it. I think. So I'm gonna use the more aggressive one first. Because why not? All right. Now, what's really going on here is that Greg is playing an elaborate hoax on us, because even if these work, I can't reorder them because they're written in Japanese. I can't even tell what they are. What am I going to search for? Japanese rock? I mean, what am I? Come on. I'm going to have to hire somebody Japanese to tell me what these say so I can order more. But we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Let's see if they work. They're kind of cool. They're like a sponge, but they're like almost like a rock. But they're not. They're a sponge. Now I'm about to get it filthy, so hopefully it won't ruin it. Huh? What are you thinking? Look how dirty it got it though. Huh? What are you thinking? It's like a huge eraser, really, is what it is. But it's real, it's like, it's hard like a rock. Well, I gotta say, Greg, that worked pretty good. Worked pretty good, buddy. I appreciate it. So we're going to use those. I don't know if I'm going to mess them all up by impregnating grease in them, though. You know what I mean? It might be a thing where I'm cleaning the fingers on the spider right now. It might be a thing where once I get grease smeared all over them, they don't work very good anymore. But we'll burn that bridge when we get there. Alright, so I'm cleaning up the little spider. Same thing, basically. There is oil on the spider, so I'm going to actually spray it. With a spray gun, so I can clean out some of the oily residue here. Alrighty. Now technically, if there is oil inside of here, that wouldn't matter because that doesn't move. Once this slides on there, it stays on there, right? But if you had oil here, that rides up against this, and if you had oil here, it would create friction if it got gummy, and it would no longer turn very well, right? So I'm just trying to make sure there isn't a bunch of gummy oil on that trace there. This thing has a little leg here, this little finger that slides on this little run here. So you need all that to be clean. And literally, you just don't want it to have a bunch of friction. You know, you want it to be able to smoothly move, right? So what we do is we grease it. So let me go grab our grease, and I'll show you what it looks like. All right, so this is the stuff we use. We have this on our website, a link to it on Amazon. You can go buy it if you want. The reason you like this stuff, the synthetic grease, is because it's dielectric, so it's good on electrical stuff. Okay? If you go to lionsarcade.com, we've got a bunch of the stuff we use whenever we do repairs on that website, up on the parts page. And a lot of it's like links to Amazon, so if you go through one of those links and then buy anything on Amazon, it gives us a tip, so we appreciate that. So I'm just going to put a little bit of it on the rivets. Since it's dielectric, you don't have to worry about if you make too big of a mess. You don't want to go crazy, right? So that's literally the only part that really touches is right there. And then, you know, you might put some around that little run there, that little race there. Okie dokie. Nice and clean. Clean, baby, clean. And then we'll try to slide this back on, if it'll go. Come on, baby. Boop, boop, boop. And you might say, how do you know which way to put it back on? It'll only go two ways. So I either put it back on like that, or I put it where they're all facing down. So this is an easy one. Okay. And we're going to put our screw back in. Okay, so it's the moment of truth, people. By the way, you don't want to tighten that down crazy. Don't go nuts on it. You don't need to, right? So let's see if it steps up and seems to be any more fluid. Now, a funny thing is, the first time you do it, it may not move that great. But then it kind of smooths out because you get the grease spread around all over the place. So Position 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Seems to be moving nice and smooth. Reset good. Okay, is it lined up though? It looks like maybe it's not lined up very well. Yeah, it's off a little bit. When you line it up, you don't really want to line it up on the 0 position, because when it goes back to 0, it's not always, you know, lined up. So you want to move it up to maybe like the 1st position. So if we line it up here, or it probably would be smarter to line it up with like the middle position, right? So maybe position 3, just in case something's warped a little bit. If it's a little bit off center this way, it might be a little bit off center that way, you know. But if you do it in the middle, it should be a good in-betweener. Okay, so I'm going to need, is that a Phillips? I can't tell from here. It is. Oh, and it's loose too. Look, it was already loose. Someone has been here before me. Usually there's 2 of them. I don't see the other one. Okay, so there's usually a set screw somewhere, and then you can just twist it a little bit. Get it a little better. You don't have to get it where it's the greatest thing ever. But you don't want it. That one looked like it was a little bit too far off to me. Alright, now it won't move by hand. Okay. So see how the reset one's a little bit too far back? And then once you get up the first one, it's a little bit too far forward. Right? So you just want to make sure that you're pretty much on the rivet all the time. You don't really want to bend the legs unless you have to. But I think that looks pretty good. What do you think? Looks pretty decent to me. What is up with the other screw? Is that missing? Goes right there, doesn't it? What'd y'all do? Steal one of my screws? Come on now. When I went in the back to get the grease, you're so tired of me talking about the freaking grease that you stole one of my screws. Well, let's see if I can find another one. I may have to guess at what size it is. There's one laying there that looks similar. Let's see here if I can get my box of stuff out. Remember we kept all that stuff that was down in the bottom of it? It's good because from time to time you figure out, well, wait a minute, there's a screw missing. Well, I don't necessarily see the right screw, but oh, wait a minute, what is this? Oh, too small. I have no clue what size it's supposed to be, but I have this one. Where did that come from? What's up with that? Will it fit, or will it just cause me trouble because I just... That's how you do it, people. Pick up the screw off the floor. Good God. Man, I'm lucky today. I'm going to go buy a lottery ticket. Be back in a little bit. Got to go to the grocery store, gas station, get a lottery ticket. I'm back. I lost all my money gambling. Alright, so I cleaned up the Jones plug with the little stone thing. And it did a pretty good job. Yeah, that might be a good little tool. We might have to try to get some more of those. In the previous video we showed this. This is the 6-volt wire. I think it's the one that goes to the back box. That was in the Jones plug here, but apparently at some point it burnt up and they had it just taped together. I'm going to re-tape it together, even though that makes it where you can't remove this board without untaping it, because I have to try to get some kind of connector that I can connect through that. The problem is that it's a high amperage connection. It's 15 amp. So if you put just a regular little Molex plug on here, it's going to burn up again. So I gotta do some research and see what kind of connection you can buy that will work with 15 amp. I gotta get something a little beefier than what I've got. But that's our problem. But yeah, it cleaned them up pretty good. These weren't really bad like some of the ones we get though. But still, it did clean them up pretty good. So you know what I think I'm gonna do? We're gonna have to go try to find these on Amazon and order more. So let me see, what would we search? How in the world? He said they were to clean knives. Let's see how good Amazon's search works. Alright, so I'm on Amazon. So I have typed gray, square looking things that are maybe made out of Japanese volcano rock and are used to clean knives. That should pull it up. The pink stuff, Miracle Cleaning Paste. A planer. Moleskin plus padding roll. Ultimate Volcano Kit. That didn't work. Let me see if I can think of another thing. Okay, so we're going to search for. That last search wasn't right. These are more like sandpaper. And Greg uses them to clean Jones plugs sometimes on pinball machines. Just bought 2 of them last week. Search. Batteries. T-shirt. Man, it's going to take a while. Okay, I took a Japanese class. That clearly says that it's a Sabatoru medium and fine 2-piece set. So I typed Rusty Racer Sabatoru medium and fine 2-piece set that Greg sent me. Let's see if that works. Oh, there they are. Yeah, it worked pretty good. All right, now we know. So we've laid it back down in there. Don't put the bolts in it yet if you're still working on it, because you're going to be back under there. What always happens is you drop a screw while you're working on underneath the playfield. It lands on the side and then rolls underneath the board, and you are screwed. Screwed, people. But if you've got the bolt still out, you can just kind of tilt it up and get under it. Okay, so and the wire down there, the hacked up wire, I've got twisted together for now. Okay. They're all fused over here, and the fuses are all good. And there was another wire that has been added with the little diode there that came up here and connected to the meter here. But they have cut loose the original wire that runs through, that originally connected to the meter. So they've done some hackery there. I'm going to leave it alone for now. I'm not going to hook that wire back up until I figure out what they were doing. We'll do that in a later video. But what I am going to do is I'm going to take that knife cleaning stone and I'm going to clean up the Jones plugs on the playfield and go ahead and set it back up in here. And maybe we can test and see if we have fixed our game over problem yet. Just by chance, when we went through and cleaned everything. So I'm going to set that back up in here, clean the Jones plugs, and we'll plug it back in and see where we get. Okay, folks, I got them cleaned up and plugged back in. Okay, now I put the playfield back in, and I have it leaning up. On a game that doesn't have a spinner, you can get away with this. If you have a spinner, you run into a problem where the spinner hangs weird whenever you lift up the playfield. And when it does that, it connects the little contact on the spinner, the little switch. Okay, if the game is actually up when it does that, it'll short the 10-point or the 100-point relay on, and then it'll sit there and go the whole time because the relay's stuck on because the spinner's upside down. So you kind of got to watch which games you do this with. But on a game like this that doesn't have a spinner, or I don't think it has a spinner, we can actually put the playfield up like that whenever we're trying to start the game up. Alright, so on the first video, when we turned it on and hit start, it would try to reset and then it would go into game over mode. So let me turn the power back on. You may see the score motor run. Yes. So what was it doing there? It was going back to its home position. So it has two positions that it will stop at. So if it's I think on this cam, if it's ever not on the home position, it is sending power to the motor through a switch on this stack. So if you're off home position, it will run until it gets back to home position. So it got back to where that switch opens again, and then there was no other switch holding it on, so it went ahead and turned off. So we don't have the ball in it. We're just going to see if it does the exact same thing or if it actually starts the game. We haven't went in the back and changed any of the score reels. Basically, we wanted to go from game over to ball and play number 1. Let's see if we fixed anything yet. We got the ball and play number 4. That's interesting. Why would it do that? I hit reset and it went back. Yeah, so we're up in gameplay. Very interesting. So we're in game over. Okay, same thing. So why did it work the first time but not the other times? I probably moved something to a place that it didn't need to be, like the game over relay or something. But now that it's worked, or the coin unit or something, but now that it's worked its way back to whatever place it was at before, we're stuck with the exact same problem. But we'll figure it out, people. We're getting there. So that's it for today, though. I gotta go home. It's late. We'll see you next time, though. Make sure to leave your comments down below. What do you think so far? It's getting there. We got that stuff pretty much doing its thing. Kinda. It's getting there. Leave your comments down below. Make sure to give us a thumbs up for taking the trouble to film it for you. Thank you to everybody that's been using our Amazon links. We appreciate that. And make sure to check out my brother Donnie. If you don't know about that, my brother Donnie is my brother. He's got a channel here on YouTube as well. There's a link down below. If you like watching us work on these old pinball machines, you would probably enjoy watching us work on old buildings. We've got a couple old buildings that we bought in a small town near here, and we are fixing them up to help revitalize their downtown area. So go check that out. We'll get back on this one tomorrow. And by the way, since this is being uploaded, I believe we're planning on, in the month of December, that means you're going to see the next video tomorrow, because we are running videos every day all December to celebrate Christmas. So we'll see you tomorrow on the next video.